Alright, hello my YouTube friends, I hope this finds you well. Today I want to talk about a really small horror film that, a lot of the films that I'm going to be talking about, isn't discussed very much, isn't given very much attention, and not many people know about. So every time I talk about this film, I have to really explain what's going on. But it's one of my favorites, and we're talking about Bruiser by George A. Romero. George Romero is also the auteur of the Day and Night of the Living Dead films. What a lot of people don't give him enough credit for as a filmmaker is having a very specific statement and message for his films. When people watch the film, they take in the horror, they take in the violence, they take in the gore. They don't always take in the message. And that's really what George Romero is doing. He's using shock and awe to say something, to get that across to people. He's not just creating shock and awe for gratuity. You know, there's a reason behind it. And he's really good at writing stories that use classic literary techniques like symbolism, like metaphor, parallelism, to create a new space, a new atmosphere for the audience to experience that has a direct relationship with the reality they are living in. And Bruiser is no different. Bruiser is about a man who feels invisible. He feels like he is not respected at work. He is not respected in his marriage. He's not respected amongst his peers. He's not respected amongst his friends. And therefore, we find a character that does not have any respect for himself. He has stopped, or maybe he never had, boundaries for other people. And he allows people to walk all over him. People take what they want, and he lets them. And that's really the major flaw of the main character, is he lets people do whatever they want to him because he has no respect for himself. But he wakes up one day and he doesn't have a face. It's just a white, blank face. No eyes even, just dots for eyes. And he learns that if he removes himself from the weeds of his life and he begins to take a more third-party perspective, if he takes a more objective perspective of who he is and what he's doing and what's happening around him, he starts to really understand how devalued he has allowed himself to become and how others see him. But now that he has no face, and therefore in George A. Romero fashion, using metaphor and symbol, no consequence. I mean, how can you hold somebody accountable if you don't even know who they are, if they don't have a face, if you don't have an identity, if you were not held accountable for your own actions, not necessarily by other people, but by yourself. If I don't have to look myself in the mirror every day, who knows what I'm capable of doing? Who knows what I can do if I don't have to feel guilt or shame? I don't know. But that's what happens to this character. He no longer has to hold himself accountable or responsible for what he thinks and feels and does. And after all these people have lain so much dirt and disrespect on him, he fights back. And he begins to fight dirty. What I love about this film so much is it feels very personal. You begin to see yourself in this character because he is an everyman. And who hasn't felt disrespected or like they can't stand up for themselves? I think at some point, everybody feels that. At some point. That may not be you now. That may not have been you in the past, but at some point, in some circumstance, everyone feels like, man, I really didn't get what I wanted. Or man, I feel disrespected. Should I go do something? No, be the bigger man. do the nice thing. Well, at some point you have to stand up for yourself. And that's really what this film is about. This film is about taking ownership of your identity. It's not only a commentary about how we choose our identity, but how other people give us an identity. If you are not careful, other people will dictate what your identity is because of how far they are able to push you. Ultimately, I see Bruiser as a comedic horror film, a satire of the dangers of not giving yourself the respect of doing what's best for you, not feeding yourself and just allowing other people to scavenge off of you. And how far down the spectrum things can unravel if you don't take ownership of those things. And that's what I like about George A. Romero so much, is he makes great films, he writes believable characters, he writes believable situations in so much as how they feel. I mean, zombies, there are no zombies, but there are metaphorical zombies. There are people out there who metaphorically don't have a face. They don't have an identity. People walk over them all the time. The doormats of the world. I've been one. George Romero has a way of taking these deep philosophical ideas and saying them through his art that immediately make them accessible. And at the end of the film, hopefully, and perhaps this is the ultimate goal of George A. Romero, to not only be entertained, but to transform themselves. It's great if I can entertain you, but I want to transform you. I want to change your thinking. I want to change your belief system. I want to restructure the paradigm of your personality by showing you a new philosophy through my art. That's what George A. Romero does.